Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Worlds Apart, Words Together, where best friends share laughter, stories, and an unbreakable bond. And we are back with a new episode for you guys this week. Hello, I'm here with my co host, Leah. And how are we doing today?
Here.
That's all that matters.
That is, that's the extent. Yeah, it's been a very stressful week. Well, past couple weeks, but specifically just winding down the semester and making sure everything is done and complete
Okay.
and on time, and you know, hopefully I can graduate. So,
Well, it's
um,
counting down the days for you. So that's good, at least.
what, 3 weeks? 3 weeks?
Something
Yeah,
like that.
three
Yeah.
weeks from Friday. Holy shit.
Wow. Time is flying.
No.
Yes.
Well, yeah, sorry. Yes, 3 weeks from Friday.
Shit, that is gonna be interesting.
That's
Um,
very scary.
it is
Okay.
very scary. And then life's gonna start, you know?
That's okay. I get to sleep.
Yeah, true. You get to have a normal-ish schedule.
Yeah. I'm actually pretty excited. Actually graduate, hopefully if that works. The attempt is there. The strong attempt
A
is
for
there.
effort.
Yeah, the A for effort is definitely there. The second part, not so sure if it's anyway. But yeah, definitely looking forward to some downtime from school and then some kind of readjustments of life.
Yeah, just new chapters starting. Some fresh starts, maybe, you know.
Yeah, my mom texted me last night at like 9:30 my time, and I'm like frantically writing, trying to get my draft in. And she was like, "How's my oldest child doing?" Like, don't even start.
Your
I
oldest child is almost losing it.
I was like, just super stressed trying to finish my writing. Yeah, nothing new happening. Just staring at a freaking computer screen writing. So that
Well,
sums it up.
but that chapter is, at least this part of that chapter is almost done and finished.
Yeah, I
So
should hopefully 3 weeks now, 3.5 weeks. So
3.5 weeks and then you're done. So we're counting down the days and we're gonna definitely be keeping up to date with whatever is going on in our lives. um, but yeah, today we have I think it's a pretty important topic to talk about. It's pretty interesting, I would say also, and it's funnily enough a topic that Michael and I have been talking about this past week a lot. Um, and that is kind of how your environment can have an effect on you, just your growth or not. And we're going to be talking about the effects of a positive environment, but also the effects of an environment that is kind of holding you back or is negative in a way. So, yeah, we're going to be talking about that, and you're probably going to hear some similar things as we've talked about in previous episodes because all of our topics kind of tie in nicely with each other. So we'll hope that you're going to learn something from this and maybe, are able to make some adjustments wherever you see fit. So,
yeah, and at the end we'll go through some like tips and tricks. To if you do notice any kind of similarities to your situation in the more negative environment, we will provide you some things to maybe try to turn that environment more into a positive feel.
yeah. Yeah. And we're going to be touching on why that positive environment is so important. So yeah, let's just get started with this topic of this week.
Yeah.
Um, Go ahead.
So let's kind of start with What do you want to go through first, the positive or the negative? Hurry.
Let's do the negatives first, and then
Okay.
we can change them into the positives. Yeah.
So yeah, so some things. So obviously, environment is an important aspect. Just environment, physical, like what room you're in, and um or anything like that, but also environment, meaning who you surround yourself with. I think that's important that both sides of that is brought into awareness,
Yeah.
because environment is not necessarily what table you're sitting next to and what your room looks like, but also who you surround yourself with. So, that being said, some negative environments can hinder that personal growth and kind of like prohibit growth of our mental mindset. And generally, these environments are characterized by like negative energy or lack of personal boundaries, lack of personal space, and emotional drain, feeling overwhelmed, anxious, stuff like that.
Yeah. And what I want to add with whatever you said about your environment is kind of the people you surround yourself with, but also the place where you're at. And something that is good to add for that is that with the environment that we're talking about, we're not talking about just a day where you're sitting in a room full of people where you're not feeling as comfortable. That environment is kind of more of a permanent situation that you're in, that you really feel on a day to day basis like, oh, I don't feel good in my own skin. I'm not feeling as comfortable as I should, or I'm just not feeling like I can really do whatever it is I know I should be doing or I can be doing. So that's also important to realize that this is not just a one time thing, but it's a more prolonged situation that you're in.
Yeah, for sure. And I think probably one of the biggest noticeable, I guess, mentality, or I don't want to just say thing, but that you notice most about being in a more negative environment is that emotional drain. Um, just because you're more easily frustrated, you're more easily angered, you break down more easily, you start questioning things that you wouldn't normally question, that are more in the negative space.
Yeah.
And then it just affecting your overall quality of life. Like you just get into this kind of bad mental repetition, which obviously everyone's going to go there because no one's going to be positive all the time. And we've talked about that in the past, but that consistent, emotional drain and consistent just wear and tear of our emotions, I think it's probably one of the most common, um and and more noticeable effect of these environments.
Yeah, totally. And to add to that too, when you're in that kind of repetition, it's also very easy to fall back to habits that are not necessarily as good, because for some reason we tend to hold on to negative habits more easily than to good habits, probably because the negative habits are also more within our comfort zone. And we are kind of programmed to stay in this comfort zone as much as we can because it provides comfort. But in the long run, that comfort zone isn't going to provide us comfort because we feel oftentimes bad when we're doing these um, negative habits because we feel bad about it, but for some reason, like there, you feel like you cannot get out of it, and that could be because of the environment that you're in.
Yeah, and I think one of the most common reason perhaps is that lack of personal boundaries and understanding what that is and what that means, and um, realizing that even just starting to put up those slightest boundaries will drastically change how you feel about yourself and how your environment around you has changed, and different things like that.
I do agree with that, and especially because, whenever you don't feel like you're in that comfort zone, it is going to be really hard to implement all the other things that we've talked about. Because if you're not in the right environment or in the right space to really feel like you can work on yourself, like that's just so, it's you're just kind of going through the days um, without actually going through the days, if that makes sense to.
Yeah, yeah.
You're just surviving, you're not
Yeah,
living.
I think people would kind of understand that concept. It's, and that's in terms of also like if you're wanting to make a change or if you're realizing something isn't working, having the um good and positive environment of your friends or your family or the people who you spend the most time with, having that environment that would be able to support you, and you can say, hey, I want to make these changes, or hey, like, this is what I'm thinking, it's what I'm feeling, but being comfortable in that like relationship side of that environment to be able to have those open conversations. Because if you're not with people who you feel like you can have those conversations with, or you can just be yourself with, they're again they're draining your emotions, they're taking advantage of your boundaries, and that's just kind of all plays and ties into some of those lack of boundaries.
Yeah. And I think also a sign, because there are probably signs that you're not really in a good place to be, is that you're just kind of constantly tired, even though you sleep pretty good at night, or
Yeah.
you have a lack of motivation, or you just really cannot get out of bed, or you have less of an appetite. Like those things are triggered by that system of like, it's kind of a warning system to tell you something's wrong,
Hmm.
and those signs are very good to listen to. And if you notice that on a prolonged time, like I said before, it's not just a one day thing. Everybody has those days where you have a bad night and you feel like shit. Leah's had them for the past I
Yeah,
don't
but
know
then
how many how many weeks, but not sleeping good. Um, but if it has an explainable reason, let's say for Leah, she has to do all this thesis work, so it makes sense. But if you don't have really a reason as to why you're sleeping bad, why you have a loss of appetite, things like that, then it might be good to be like, hey, maybe something in my environment is not the way it should be, and you should try to identify that.
yeah, and kind of moving into more of the positive environments, it's kind of similar, complete opposite of what we just went.
Flips.
It's basically a 180. Like, you do have those supportive relationships, you are, physically comfortable in your like domain, meaning like your room, your house, your workplace, your school, and all your like all your day-to-day activities and thoughts generally align with a certain set of values that you hold, that kind of like define you, and you're comfortable with that, and everyone around you kind of like accepts that and sees it as being beneficial for you.
And to hone in on that as well, what I said about the sleeping and the eating, it's also the complete opposite. Um, you will feel a lot more rested. You go to bed, you're tired, you wake up and you think, oh, I feel good. I feel ready to start the day. You are easily out of bed and going. You can just do those things with a lot more ease than when you feel stuck or you feel not as comfortable or you feel like something is holding you back.
Yeah, I
Um,
think especially in terms of like outside your home, most people would consider probably like their home to be like a safe environment. They can eat whatever they want. They can, you know, make decisions however they feel, so on. But like if you're going to a school environment or like a work environment or some other kind of aspect that you're having to go to every day, day in and day out, just for like basic survival, income, so on. If you feel a dread to go into these places, chances are it's not where you're supposed to be. I've felt that on multiple occasions, and I've worked through them. And just knowing that if you're in the right place, that won't be a consistent feeling every time you get up or every time you have to go
no,
in.
like you'll be genuinely excited, or maybe not always excited, but you're like, yeah, let's go, let's do it. Because no one ever, well, that's why maybe someone ever went to work with a good attitude, but I don't believe that 100% of people go to work with a good attitude every day. Like, you go to work sometimes and you're like, I should have been on a plane to friggin' Bora Bora today. Because that's what I'm supposed to do with my life. But here I am at work.
Yeah, I think the most difficult kind of recognition is those or your environment that's closest to you, because you can you can go to like work, for example, and you kind of know pretty quickly, just taking a step back and saying, okay, how do I feel going into work? How do I feel at work? How do I feel about my coworkers? To gauge whether it's a positive or negative environment, I think it's harder to do that about your own home or about your
Yeah.
closest friends or your family that you're in contact with every day. And those are the ones that affect you even more.
And
And
I think that,
no, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that's especially difficult if you have nothing to compare it to, if
Mhm.
that's what you've always been in, that
Yeah.
situation. And that
Yeah.
is something, sorry, you want to,
No, I'm just saying,
okay.
that's just kind of like, it's hard because you can take, for example, like you have college friends or you have high school friends that um, don't have the best influence on you, but you don't see it as hindering your life at all. And your eyes aren't really opened to like the consequences of what could happen later on. And realizing that, if you don't want to do those things anymore, and then they just kind of never talk to you again, chances are like they were pretty toxic friends. They were
Yeah.
setting a negative environment for you, and you just may not have seen it or grasped it or understood it at the time because you're like, no, no, we're friends. Yeah, we're chill. No, no, chances are they were only there because you were doing what they wanted to do. And that's not
Yeah.
just like drugs and alcohol, but that's just like, you go shopping
Anything.
or you do um you just want to binge movies, but you really feel like, oh, maybe I should do my hour of exercise a day, but all your friends are like, no, 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 let's just go out to eat and watch movies and do all this, and that's not the type of person you are, and you don't think that's going to help you reach your goal, then those are more of, negative environment friends. Doesn't mean you
And
can't
I,
have a balance.
no. And what I do think is, at some point, because it is really hard to step away from those friends if there's no alternative, or at least no good alternative.
Mhm.
If the alternative is no friends,
Yeah.
no one's going to choose that.
Yeah.
then you're going to stay friends with those people. But at some point in your life, somebody else is going to come along, or a group of people, or a different environment where you just happen to fall into, and you realize, like, oh, okay. And that's where that comparison
Mm-hmm.
is coming from. And that's why I think is very important to realize, like, if you have nothing to compare your situation to, it's going to be a lot harder to realize that your environment is great or maybe not as good.
Yeah, 100%.
And
100%.
it's the same with me comparing the United States to the Netherlands. Like, I've lived both. I've not lived as a citizen in the US, so I wouldn't know. But from the things that I've seen, I'm pretty capable of comparing the two countries and being like, I kind of know where I see myself live.
Mm-hmm.
But, for people in the US or people in the Netherlands, they don't have usually that comparison. So they're satisfied with what they have until they realize elsewhere it's a lot better.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
and it's got a bit dark in here. Another good example for that, I think, is Michael. Michael is always a good example for our podcasts, because he is struggling with his family right now, and he wants to make that move to come to the Netherlands. But he's doubting, and he's like, I don't know if I should leave. And I asked him to picture his life in the US with playing volleyball, working, and do the same living in the Netherlands and working and playing volleyball. And I said, what makes you feel more happy? And he said, well, living in the Netherlands and whatnot. And so he has that comparison material because he's experienced life here and he's also experienced life in the US. But a lot of people do not have that. And then it takes a lot of strength and a lot of power to really realize this isn't good for me. And then it takes even more strength to do something about it.
Yes, I think that doing something about it is kind of like a fearful objective for some people. Like taking that step and saying, I know this is wrong, or I know this isn't helping me, and figure out how to change. Because a lot of people don't know how to take that first step. And
No.
a lot of people uh, will try to make that first step and perhaps they fail, and then they're like, oh well, maybe it's just meant to be. I'm always supposed to be with these people, or I'm always supposed to be doing this thing, and my environment's always going to be like this.
And the reason that that is the case is because even though that environment isn't necessarily good, it is what is comfortable because it is what is known to them. Um, they are familiar with the situation, they're familiar with how things run. So it's comfortable to stay there and to take that next step. Like for you moving to Connecticut, leaving where you are now might not be as comfortable.
Oh, I'm fine with it. Hunter made me
No,
just
I know. But even for you, it is still a move and you would have to adjust. But you are open-minded in that. And Hunter is more held back of like, but I'm fine here because he's comfortable. So for
yeah,
him it's
and
going to take a lot more to get out of that.
yeah, I think it's also just partially like how you grew up, the values that you grew up with, kind of like all of that combined with your experiences. Because I moved halfway across the world at 10. 2 years later, I moved again. 6 years later, I came to college and moved every year, 4 years in a row. So to me, I'm like, let's go. I got no attachments here.
Yeah.
I
No,
finished
you're right.
school. Let's go. Let's figure out life. I don't have kids. I don't, whatever. Let's go. Hunter grew up in a family where his dad never left the area, really. He's living where he grew up. His mom, oh my gosh, she moved out of Minnesota and lived in St. Louis and moved back to Illinois and hasn't left since. So his kind of mindset is I have a job here, I'm stable, I'm comfortable, I'm happy here, let's do it. And there's not really much desire to move outside of that, where I'm like, I have an opportunity here, we're gonna
Let's
take
do
it,
it.
because
Yeah.
what else is, and I'm speaking very, very fast because I mean I haven't even been accepted yet. So it's
But
just
it's a
mind
potential
yeah,
possibility.
it's that mindset of um being okay with taking that first step, even though you have
Yeah.
kind of some questions, some like anxiousness. And obviously you need to weigh the pros and cons and be like, is this valuable for me in the direction I want to go? Because sometimes you are presented options and you're like, that no, that's not gonna help me. And then
Yeah.
obviously you don't want to take that. You want to stay where you are. But in those instances where you have an option to change your environment, like I would say my environment here, I really hope no one here listens that I know personally. Um, the
We
environment
have one listener, so you're good.
the environment that I'm currently in is it's not positive. It's not as negative as it used to be, but it's definitely not positive.
So you
And
cannot wait to get out of there.
yeah, I'm not very like happy here in my area. I want to take that next step, and that's kind of me being me because that's my background. It's like, okay, you have an opportunity, move. Like, there's no real like holding you back right now. There's no
Yeah.
ties to a certain area right now, so why wouldn't you? And I think just being aware that if a situation like that arises and you see it as beneficial and for yourself and for what you want and your goals, it's okay to take that step, even if you're scared. And even if everything doesn't go to plan and there's some failure in there, there's some great things in there, that's good. I mean, that's normal. That's how
Yeah.
life continues.
And that is kind of a good um, transition, I guess, into our tips and tricks into how to change that environment because like we mentioned, once you've identified either you're in a good environment, perfect. Let's keep it that way. At some point it might be a little bumpy and you might want to find something different, but if you're good with where you're at, please stay there. We're chilling. But if you feel like, I need to find a way to get out of here, we kind of go back to points that we've mentioned in other episodes as well. And one of them could be um, setting boundaries for yourself.
Yeah, and
Um,
we like you mentioned, we did a quite in depth podcast on setting boundaries and what that means and what that looks like, and some additional like tips and tricks on how to set boundaries. So for
yeah,
sure, go back and listen to that one because that's a really good one to start weeding out the good, the negative, and the positive in your life.
because even if you are in a positive environment, it's still important to have those boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Because having boundaries doesn't, you know, equate to having a positive environment. Um, but if you have those boundaries, you probably feel a lot more at ease with yourself because you know what you want and how you want it, and you want other people to respect that.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I go to bed at 10 p.m. and then I just read. And at first my mom and dad were like, "Why you go to bed so early?" And I said, "Well, I want to read before I go to bed. So I go to bed a bit earlier so I can read." And then they were like, "Oh,
That's early.
sure." Yeah. For
That's
yeah.
late.
No, for us it's a bit early. But they are respecting that boundary that I put up for myself. And you also got to stay true to that because if you're like, well, I guess they're right. I guess I do have to stay up a little later. And then you're kind of going against what you really want. You immediately start to feel little less comfortable with the
Mm-hmm.
situation you're in. So, um, The episode that we talk about boundaries is episode 26.
There
So,
you go. So go back to episode 26.
episode 26, baby.
And so then the next kind of like tip is if you kind of feel like alone or unsure, or you just want some additional help, is to seek support, whether it's from friends or family members or professionals, and just find that group or that one person or two people that you can surround yourself with who kind of help you make that step, who challenge you
Yeah.
but also empower you to make that step.
And that ties in very well with being open minded. Um, we cannot tell you enough how your life changes when you're in your 20s. Especially within your 20s, you have to be open minded because things can change from one day to another. People are, coming and leaving every year, every 2 years, because you go to school, you leave school, you find a job, you leave the job. So you make these connections everywhere you go, and the ones that you truly stick with are the ones that probably are going to be around for a lot longer, and those are probably also the connections that you can go to if you're struggling with finding that. So even if you have any doubts, just going to a friend and telling them, hey, I'm not sure if I'm in the right place. I'm not sure if this environment is good for me. And then if they're a good friend, they'll talk with you about it, and they'll, you know, try to figure out what's wrong and what can be improved.
Yeah, and the don't I don't know how to say this out. Don't necessarily seek someone out who is going to tell you what, or cement
What
what
you want
you're
to hear.
already thinking. Yeah. Don't, unless it's just the right decision or the right thoughts, because
Yeah.
you purposely seeking someone out who typically agrees with you, or is just going to tell you what you want to hear. That's not going to help you. You got to find someone who's going to be like honest, but you also know will have your best interest in mind. So despite them
Yeah.
being honest and weighing pros and cons, or playing devil's advocate, or whatever you want to say, you also know that that conversation could be hurtful, hopefully, in a polite friend way. But, something like truth sometimes hurts. So even though
Yeah.
things are going to be out there that's going to be uncomfortable, you still have trust in that person to have this conversation with your best interests in mind.
I mean, you and I have had those conversations multiple times where you told me things and you were like, I'm just trying to give you my honest opinion, how
Mhm.
I look at the situation, and the other way around. And we try to not take it personal because it isn't personal. It's just how we look at that situation because we want what's best for the other person, and sometimes that person doesn't see it themselves
Yeah,
just yet.
and sometimes, someone looking in can kind of see something off, or something isn't working, or see a noticeable change in you when you don't see it yourself because you're in the midst of it. So having
Yeah.
that kind of like outside perspective looking in, although it may not be correct at all times, you can comprehend, or you can start to um process what it does look like from the outside, and really take a good look at, you know, what that internal situation actually is.
Yeah, totally. And then to kind of wrap it up a little bit with the last like kind of tip or trick is the first step to changing that is to create that change.
Mhm.
Um, so if it is possible in your environment at that time, try to work towards transforming that environment, or seek something that is better aligned with whatever you value and your goals. If you're noticing, hey, I'm stuck here, I really, I don't have a way out, try to search for little things that can help you with taking that first step to making that change.
Yeah, I
It's
think. Oh,
Oh, well, I was just going to give another Michael example where he wants to come here and he's like, but I need a plan. I need a job. I need this, I need that. And I'm like, okay, let's take a step back. I know you need a job, but a job is not going to just fly into your lap. Like, you would need to actively search for a job in order to get a job.
mm-hmm.
Um, So if you want that change, try to do whatever you can, even if it's just the littlest thing. Maybe tune your CV a little bit, make your resume look nicer. Those little things towards that change. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm glad that you mentioned or you pointed out that it can be small. So I know a lot of times in today's society, it's you go all in or nothing. There it's like you're gonna make this drastic change or you don't, and that's not sustainable. A lot of times you fail in one way or another, and then you kind of just give up. So making those changes is kind of like a domino effect. You start with something really small, and then, like, for example, like fixing up your CV. Then, okay, next step is maybe signing up for like one of those online job recruiter websites so that you are constantly getting emails about something in your interest that is
Yeah, so
available.
like job alerts kind of thing.
And
Yeah.
then and then that's going to lead to the next step. Oh, you have a couple interviews. That will lead to the next thing. Like, maybe all those interviews don't work out. Maybe some of them do, some of them don't. But that's the little like domino effect that you can implement
Yeah.
in literally everything: health, wellness, mental health, job search, career change, family, physical movement or
Yeah.
moving. um it's just really important that you understand sustainable change is done by little steps adding up, not a drastic 180.
No, and that's also good that you mentioned that, because a lot of people who are like, I want to live a healthier life, they decide to change everything at once.
Yeah.
They want to drink more water, want to sleep better, want to eat better, but also things like that. You start by drinking 2 glasses of water more a day.
Yeah.
After 3 weeks, perfect. We got that into our routine. We'll add a little bit more into that systematic change. And that's the same with getting out of that environment. If you can do it all at once and you feel comfortable doing that, and if there's really no other way for you to go about that, if you feel comfortable, do it.
Mhm.
But if not, if it's still, if you can still maintain that life while you're in that environment, but you feel like a change needs to happen anytime soon, make those little steps instead, because that will be a lot easier.
Yeah, and it's easier. And a lot of times you can be several little steps in before anyone notices a change, like outwardly. But you notice that change more internally a lot sooner, and you will
Yeah.
start feeling better, and all that. And then other people in your environment may either be like, oh, like, kind of catch on and be super supportive, and those are like good people to be around. They just, you guys were all just vibing off of weird like different energy. And they want to, like, maybe you make a positive impact on them, and they're like, oh, maybe I need to reevaluate. And then there's gonna be some people who just like straight up think that, like, put you down because they're jealous, or they're um
Selfish.
yeah, selfish, or whatever it may be.
Or
um
they want what's best for them and not for you.
exactly, exactly. And so those people you may be like, maybe I don't associate as much, and then eventually that could be some turn into something that you don't associate at all. But again, that's part of setting those boundaries
Yeah.
um, around yourself and ways that will help benefit you to get you where you want to go.
Yeah. Very well. And, I think all of that, what we talked about, kind of summarize it a little bit is that our environment has a great impact on our well being and personal growth. And the first step is kind of to recognize, is my environment good for me or could it be better? And then once you recognize that, you take the steps and make different choices that, help with the happiness and the fulfillment that we get out of it and whatnot. Um, but yeah, the most important thing is just that you keep evaluating, you keep set boundaries, you seek new opportunities, you keep an open mind. And not every day is going to be a good day, but as long as you take those steps, I think it'll turn out okay.
Yeah, 100%. And if anyone who is listening or have read our blog, leave comments or likes and
Yeah,
let us know what you're working towards, because we may not be with you physically, but we're one message away. And we can help, we can be that more like virtual positive support where, we can check in on you or help you and encourage you in whatever way that would suit you best. Like, we would love to
exactly.
do that for anyone. So, like I said,
Yeah, or if you need some clarification on things that we talked about and you're not quite sure what we mean, don't hesitate to send us a message because we're
yeah,
more than willing to help you find a best way for you.
yeah,
Um,
100%. So, with that, thank you for joining us as we offer a glimpse into the world of true friendship, where even though worlds may seem apart, the connection remains strong.
yep. I'll see you next time.
Yeah.
Bye.